Coming out as a gay man at the age of 18, almost 19, was one of the scariest, most important things I've ever done in my life. And I recently told my story about my childhood growing up, my relationship with the church, and all events that led to my coming out. And I'll link that video in the description below for those of you who haven't seen it, because that was just the beginning. And I've said before that I don't think my true life began until the day I came out. So now I want to tell you about what happened next after coming out. Because coming out started a chain reaction or a domino effect of life events that brought me where I am today. From a closeted, small-town Christian boy in Washington State to a proud, gay, career-driven guy now living in LA, this is the story of my life after coming out and how I got where I am today. The year I came out was a year of firsts. Not only was it the first time I was telling people I was gay, but it was the first time I experienced losing relationships with some friends, losing my place in the church, and losing the normalcy of home life with my parents because now there seemed to always be this rainbow-spotted elephant in the room that made for quite a lot of tense, awkward, or surface-level conversations, at least for the first year being out. But it was also the same year I made new friendships that became some of the most meaningful, lifelong friendships of my life. The first time I started working in a job that would become a career for a time. The first time I had sex and lost my virginity. The first time I truly fell in love. The first time I experienced a broken heart. And also the first time I went to a gay pride festival and was immersed into the colorful gay community. My sister went with me to my first gay pride festival experience, and it was overwhelming, but I look back and I never remember feeling nervous or anxious in that crowd. There were thousands of people, so many colors, so much music, it was loud, and there were nearly naked people everywhere. But the overwhelming sense of community and unconditional love was a kind of energy I never experienced at that magnitude before. Now, I grew up loving to perform on stage, and so I continued to be involved in community theater productions well after coming out, and it was the first time I was honored to even star in a few theater productions. My circles of friends grew that much more, and I have some of the greatest memories on stage. But I made a decision to focus on my job and growing in my professional leadership experience. And with how time-consuming theater can be, I chose to close that chapter of my life and focus my drive elsewhere. I had no intention of making a career out of acting or theater, but I did know that whatever my career would be, it would be bigger and well outside of my small-town community. I had high expectations for myself, and I was determined to work my ass off to make something more than what I was. So it's about a year and a half after coming out, and in that time I was dating, I was working full-time, I was having adventures, making so many new friends, spending as much time as I could in the city, and essentially living a carefree and fleeting 20-year-old life without too much responsibility. And then I go on to make what I still consider to be the most reckless decision of my life that I've ever made. And that was choosing to move away from home for the first time to Arizona, of all places, but with my boyfriend at the time, and who I had only been dating for 6 months. And all of this sounds crazy to me as I look back on it. Even though I was always a planner, organized, responsible, and relatively sensible, leading a comfortable 20-year-old life, I was also young, naive, and hopelessly in love. And now I'm choosing to give up my comfortable way of living and move out of my parents' house for the first time, starting over in a way I've never done before, in a place I'd never been, with someone I hadn't been with very long. My convictions were telling me to go, and even though all my close friends and family expressed understandable concerns, no one actually stopped me from following through with this decision. And so I packed up my life and moved down to Arizona with my boyfriend within just 2 weeks of deciding to move. Getting settled in Arizona was one of the most grueling experiences of my life. It's bad enough that I'm in a completely new state with no friends, but we lived in a broken down house with so much property damage, and it was almost an hour outside of Phoenix, so far out in the rural desert. I struggled to find a job in the beginning that I really liked, and my boyfriend and I continued to have relationship problems, which led to us breaking up within the first 6 months of us living there. Luckily, by the time we broke up, I had a job that I liked, and I had started to make some new friends. But I had to make a choice to either move back home after the breakup or stay in Arizona. I knew I would have my parents' house at home to move back into, I'd have my friends, I'd have my old job back, and I'd fall back into my comfortable lifestyle very easily, and I'd be welcomed back in a heartbeat. But I didn't want to fall back into my old life and go back to living with my parents because I knew I could run the risk of getting too comfortable. So I personally saw this as my opportunity to learn some real adulting, learn some hard lessons, and grow up and fend for myself for pretty much the first time in my life. Plus, my dream at that point was to move to California eventually, and Arizona was right next door. So I chose to stay and make a life for myself in Arizona. And so began my new life, and with each passing year living there, I kept telling myself that the next year would be the big move to LA. And year after year kept passing. And even though it was in California, I was establishing a pretty happy life for myself. It took a few years before I realized the field of work I wanted to pursue as my career, and that was to work in the Hollywood film industry. Not as an actor, but as someone who helped produce and create films. But I knew that that life wouldn't really start until I got out to LA. So until I was ready to move again, I poured myself into my work within the beauty industry. I was promoted to management within my first year of living in Arizona, and I focused my professional efforts to grow as a leader. I was given opportunities to travel for my job, where I attended business conferences, workshops, meeting so many amazing individuals, and I learned so many valuable lessons in leadership. I knew I didn't have a college education, so I chose to gain as much work experience and leadership experience as I possibly could. I'm grateful to say that my efforts paid off to a point because I was honored to receive Manager of the Year in the company I worked for, and our salon location won Salon of the Year 2 years in a row. Though I wasn't working in an industry I didn't intend to make my lifelong career, I'm very proud of the time and effort and experience I put into that job because it sharpened my work ethic, my people skills, and allowed me so much professional development. I'm even more grateful for the hard lessons I learned and for the lifelong friendships and connections I made along the way. Though I wasn't working in a job that directly lent itself to my dream career in Hollywood, I fueled my passions as best I could while remaining in Arizona. I explored a brief window of modeling that didn't go anywhere beyond one modeling event and a handful of photography sessions. And though I enjoyed it, I never gave any serious thought to modeling, but it's definitely fun to look back on. Because I was so passionate about movies, I decided to create my own amateur YouTube channel where I started shooting my own movie reviews and various movie discussions. I also created passion projects along the way, like a talk show with my best friend, a few videos focused on comical gay commentary, as well as some vlogs of various Arizona adventures, and really letting my creativity run wild at times. These videos were fueling my creative passions and also made for some of the best memories for me. Time kept moving and many things changed that brought about new beginnings as well as some tragic endings. Because while living in Arizona those years, I also experienced loss for the first time by losing both my grandfathers 1 year after the other. I was so lucky to have grown up with both my grandfathers in my life well into my 20s, and though they both lived very long lives and were beloved by the family, I was left with a pondering question after losing them. And that was if they had been proud of me. And not just me as their grandson, but me as their gay grandson. Though I came out to the family, I never really had a true heart-to-heart with either of them individually about their thoughts and feelings on it. They were always so loving, and I looked up to them so much, and I regret not being quite as open about myself with them directly. But in the end, I hope they know how much I loved them, and I can only hope that they would be proud of me now. In talking about my career goals, it was about 4.5 years after living in Arizona until I finally realized where I wanted my dream career to manifest in Hollywood. And it was somewhere that was right in front of me, something that was always a part of my life growing up, something I was passionate about, but never gave thought to consider for my career. And that was the Walt Disney Company. Disney to this day is an entity that fills my heart with pure joy. The happy and energetic child that I was with a huge smile on my face still comes out, especially when I'm at the Disney parks. But when I learned of a good friend of mine who joined the Disney company within their corporate divisions, I felt like a light bulb went off in my head. Even though it had taken years to realize my career should be in Hollywood, I never knew where in Hollywood I would want to build my career. But now that I had a friend on the inside and at a company I admired so much, it's like all the pieces fit together. And so began my early manifestations of a future career at Disney. I lived in Arizona a total of 6 years. And though I learned a lot of lessons when it came to living on my own, growing in my job, developing my friendships, learning what I wanted to do with my life, I also learned so many hard lessons in the world of love and relationships. I came to Arizona a lot more fragile with my emotions and my heart. I compromised myself and gave too much of myself too easily that left me vulnerable to a lot of hurt. But I'm glad of that because had I not been so open-hearted, I never would have been in the position to repair myself when I was broken, or pick myself back up, or learn some of the most valuable lessons about love that gave me thicker skin, more wisdom, and learning more and more about myself and the type of love that I need and deserve. My motto in life is that all things happen for a reason and people come into our lives for a reason. And so it was the last relationship I was in where, after more than a year being together, circumstances were calling my boyfriend to LA. And I saw this as the opportunity I needed to finally move from Arizona. And so I finally uprooted myself and made the big move to LA on my actual birthday just over a year ago. And just a few months after getting settled and after a long process of meeting people and not knowing when things would happen, I finally got a call to interview at Disney. And within the week after my interview, I was offered the job. Here I was, finally living in LA, finally getting a job for a company I want to build a career from, actually planting roots for myself, and it was exhilarating. And through all of that, I'm sad to say that moving to LA also meant costing me my relationship. People will either grow together or apart, and it definitely wasn't easy when I realized that the next phase of my life would have to continue without my boyfriend. But after he and I broke up, it felt like the last lingering piece of the previous chapter of my life that needed to be let go. It's now been 9 years since I came out, 6 of them spent in Arizona, and now I've lived my first full year in LA. When I look back on my life after coming out and not just saying all the wonderful things that happened, but reflecting on the challenges I overcame, the ways I improved myself, how life made me stronger, wiser, and how much I have changed for the better, I haven't abandoned that little energetic boy with a big smile on his face. The little boy with so much drive, passion, excitement, and energy for life. He's still very much in me, and that drive and passion and excitement for life is even stronger than ever. I can look back and regret not coming out sooner, or moving sooner, or regret some bad relationships, or regret not making certain decisions more wisely, but the journey still got me where I am now. And it's made clearer than anything else in my life that coming out was the best thing I ever did. I embraced who I am, and I was able to start living a life so much better and enriched in ways I didn't think were even possible. And that alone gives me reassurance that I did the right thing in not only coming out, but coming out when I did. And better yet, in knowing that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.